All right, hello distance learners. This is a lesson on program structure from Monday, September 14th. If you forget how to get into it, I'm assuming you already got here because you found this video here. But yeah, I'm just going to walk you through what's going on today. The first thing, if you haven't already done it, is just to post a quick blog about your highlight of your weekend. Hoping all the regular students and the distance learners will be doing this, so a way to learn a little bit about each other. So do that if you haven't already. Okay, and you're already watching this video. And so the main thing is just today is to learn some like structure of how you structure code in a way that's going to be easy to edit down the road and easy to read. So that's kind of the main point of this lesson. And then at the end, there's kind of two additional pieces. One, I want you to be able to set up your AP account because we'll do some assignments on there, and I might actually do testing in this AP site. So you need to be able to get in there and log in. So you need to make a username and password to make sure you remember those. And then for homework, what I often do on these chapters is just I'll give like some little assignments along the way, but I'll also give like one big set of programming exercises that you can kind of work through as we're going through the lessons. And so that's going to be the final part, is to kind of start in on that and hopefully give you some more information about setting everything up initially if you didn't get it already when we did our first Hello World program. So that's what's going on today. And I'm going to dive into the structure part here. And so I got a little file for us to walk through. All right. And so our goal, if you want to take some notes, is to learn how to structure our code. And there wouldn't be a lot to take for notes. I think the biggest thing is honestly to like pause the video and try some of the questions that I'll be asking. Okay, so I'm actually going to bring up my Eclipse here, and I'm going to say, if you were to look at this program and try and figure out what it did, or if you had to make an edit to it, maybe you wanted to add some more print stuff. It does work currently. Like if I run it, you can see it says, how was your weekend, right? But it's kind of goofy to look at. And as your programs get harder, then it's going to be harder to tell what's going on. So how could it be improved is my question. So pause the video and think about it. All right, so your answers are 1. I think it's much better to space things out. So this is all really compact. And in fact, you could put the entire program on a single line and it would still run. But it's not good practice, right? So, I always kind of space things out a little bit. And you can see Eclipse is doing some sort of auto formatting for me. And, oh geez, now it's a little messed up. But generally, I put stuff on a new line, and then I line up my open and close parentheses so that we can kind of see what's inside of these parentheses pretty easily. All right, and usually once you do a parentheses, then you indent everything one level, like one tab in. All right, and so then here I have a second set of parentheses, so any statements inside of there, right, if I was to do another statement here, right, then they would all be indented one more level because I have a second level of parentheses. So structuring your code that way makes it much easier to read and much easier to see. Okay, the only other thing I would maybe have here is, as your programs get harder, I do recommend doing little comments. So, these are pretty straightforward in the beginning, but as they get harder, just making little comments like main method is what runs when you hit go on a Java program. Okay, so having those little comments, I think is pretty helpful for reading and understanding code. All right, so that's kind of the lesson, is to like how to structure it and how to make it easy to read and easy to understand. Okay, so just a review from the other day, we have a Hello World program that says, hello, darling, right? That must be to my wife or something like that. At any rate, what must be the name of the file, right? If this is the code, what would the name of the file have to be? Pause the video and see if you can remember. Okay, so hopefully you realize that whatever is right here has to match the name. So it would have to be named Hello World with the same uppercase and everything. And then our Java programs have an extension of .java. So this one would have to be named Hello World.java. Okay, so what is a class in Java? That's your next question. Pause the video. All right, so a class is just like an individual, for now, think of it as an individual program. So you can write multiple different programs. And so each program, you make your own .java file, right? You make your own .java. And then inside of there, you'll do public class, and that will be the individual code for that program. Okay, so a class is sort of like a, for now, think of it as a single program. All right. Eventually, we'll figure out how to link our programs together and use the code that exists in other programs. But for now, just know that like a class represents a single program. So here's a hack password program that we're looking at right there. All right, so a couple questions for you. We didn't necessarily cover all of this, but pause the video and take your best guess at these questions. All right, so the purpose of the main method is that is the code that runs at the start of the, and again, it runs sequentially in order. So if you have multiple lines, it'll just run line by line by line by line by line all the way down. See if I can find an example of that here quick. All right, so here's just a sample one that prints out line by line by line with a return at the end. And so it makes, not surprisingly, an American flag. It's probably maybe not the right number of stars and stripes. I'm not sure I was that detailed, but there is the American flag. So it runs sequentially when you hit go on your program. Must every class have a main method? The answer to that is no. For now, they will, but eventually you'll learn like you can call the code in different ways besides just using main. And so not every class will have one, but for our purposes for the beginning of the year, for most, all of them will have main method. Might not make sense yet. That's one, honestly, the hard part about teaching this class is so much of it runs together and you have to know certain parts to understand different parts. So it'll make more sense as you learn the little pieces as we go. So don't worry too much right now if some of this doesn't make a ton of sense. All right, I think I already talked about this one where this is a coding preference. And if you ever meet a programmer and you ask them where do they stick the curly brace, do they stick it on the same line or the next line, you will get all sorts of different opinions, and people are super passionate about this. I've gotten into raucous debates with programmers about where you should put this little curly brace. For me, I definitely like to do it this first way, where you line them up. It's easy to see the open and close parentheses that match each other. This second way saves a little bit of space, but honestly, you have tons of space in your program. It's like a Word doc. It doesn't matter how much space you use. So I hate this. And if you want to watch a funny video, in class we're going to watch this, but I'm not sure am I able to do this in the video and get sound. So I will post this video about, I don't know what I'll call it. Maybe I'll call it like coding preference or something, this YouTube video. If you want to watch it, I'll post it. I don't have it in here right now, but I'll add it here at the bottom if you want to watch it. It's actually pretty funny. I highly encourage you to watch it. Just about how passionate people get about the way to do it. So you can do what you want, but honestly, if you want to, save your teacher sanity, do it the first way. Okay, the next part that I think is a huge piece of this lesson is to understand that when you code, you have both blocks and statements. And so the difference is a statement sort of does something. So at the top, here's a bunch of statements, and they might not all make sense yet. We hopefully know the print one here at the end, but this first one just takes a variable, calls it an integer, gives it a name of age, and gives it an initial value of 15. And then the second variable, younger, is going to be equal to whatever age was minus 8. So it's going to be 7 in this case. Okay, and those are statements, and they end with semicolons. All right, and they sort of do something, I guess is what I would call a statement. It does some sort of task, one step in the process. All right, versus block is like a section of code. Okay, and so for now, the only block we've really dealt with is this main method. And the big difference is blocks don't have semicolons. They have open and close, and then they can have multiple statements inside of them. Right, so a main method, like the American flag one I showed, can have a whole bunch of different statements. All right, and so they open and close, and then they don't have semicolons. All right, so a couple other examples is an if statement. Right, this just says basically if the age variable is greater than 16, we run this code. Otherwise, we don't. And here's another for loop that says we want to run a certain set of code 10 times. Right, that's what this is saying. It'll make more sense in a later chapter, but it'll run whatever inside of here 10 times. So again, no semicolon at the end of this. It just has an open and close parenthesis. All right, no, I bring this up because I guarantee you'll make this mistake. Students will put semicolons here, but that's not the right spot for them, right? These are blocks that open and close. They are not statements, so do not put semicolons here. Otherwise, you're gonna be in a world of pain. So that's why the difference between blocks and statements are so important. Okay, so I'd like you to, maybe I'll hide half the screen here. If you want to actually pause the video here quick and see in this first code, can you identify some statements and some blocks, right? And kind of think of how do you know? Yeah, so pause the video and see if you can identify some. Okay, so these 4 lines here are all statements. So I can't label it super good here, but these are statements, right? Maybe I'll try and get a little arrow, point to them. Zoom, 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 zoom. All right, so those are 4 statements. They all end in semicolons. All right, that's a dead giveaway. And then we have just a single block. So the block that we have in this case is the main method that opens and closes here. All right. And if you want to do one more example here quick, you could pause the video and try this one. Blocks or statements that you see here. Okay, and so again, you've got a lot of statements like return false, return false, return false, return true. Those are all statements because they end in semicolons. And so maybe I'll add that in here quick. Statements. Do some arrows best I can. I'm not going to do all of them, but there's a statement. There's a statement, right? And then the blocks would be this whole method here that begins and ends here. That's a block. And then this if right there would be a block. And then the else if is a block. And then there's another block there. Okay, so again, those don't have semicolons. They just have an open and close parenthesis. So those are block. All right. Some final things to know. This might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, I guess, but there's certain keywords in Java, and you'll see those highlighted in purple. And when you do your programs, Eclipse highlights them in purple, package, right? And I guess you don't really got to know too much about them. Maybe I'll talk more about that in a future lesson. I realize maybe this is not the best spot for it, but basically, you can only use these words for their purpose. You can't use them as like the name of your variable or something like that. And that'll make more sense maybe when we get into variables. Okay, and then just a final thing. I know we've already talked about comments a bunch. So here's your 2 ways again. A multi-line comment looks like that. And then a single line comment looks like that. And in fairness to the world of commenters, I'm not a huge commenter, but it is smart and it is good practice, even though it takes a little bit of extra time. It'll greatly help when you have to go back and alter your program to have some comments about what it does. So especially as you get more complex, I highly recommend doing comments. All right, final thing I got for this on structuring your code is if you become a programmer or you look at other people's code, they're going to do what's called this camel case. Okay, and so a camel case is you uppercase the first letter of each name. So here's some variable names. And so current speed, each word has an uppercase letter for the next word. So students in class, right? And the only difference is with a variable, the first letter is usually lowercase. Okay, and when you do a class, you do that same camel case, except the first letter is also uppercase. So that's just a naming convention that probably is good practice to be in. If you ever go on beyond this class, that's definitely the way they'll do it. So yeah, and we're not going to talk about this last one. I sometimes regret getting a little bit too ahead of myself, so we won't have to worry about constant quite yet. All right, so I'm out of time in this video, but I'll make another one about the next 2 parts. They're not so much notes, they're just a couple activities for you to get started on. So I'll give an explanation of those activities in a second video.